Hello.
Hello. Hello. We're going straight into it today. And for those of you who follow streams with Gene and me, we are actually doing segments today, mostly on uh, headlines in the news, but also on recent debates in the online media space, which Gene does not participate in. And we will be talking about a few different things today. So we will be talking about geopolitics. Um, I think I say academic backlash, robots, the Lumpen, and memes. So we will start today with the geopolitics part. And there's kind of three major things we want to talk about. But the first one I want to talk about is this crazy fucking article that I read in the New York Times about what Israel tried to do with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and also how bad they screwed up. If the New York Times is telling the truth. Um, you've been asked, has Gene left TR for Varnblock?
No, no. I,
Well,
I was
we
on, I was on I was on TIR not so long ago.
yeah.
I will. I'm TIR till I die.
I will be on TR tomorrow night talking about Veblen goods and the luxury item market and the K-shaped economy. But no, this is just Gene. We had union negotiations with the TAR crew, and we negotiated like for a split between White Guy Wednesday and I got the off white guy on White Guy Wednesday, and
Off White Wednesday.
um, uh, Gene is obviously the off white guy, and then the more pure Polish white, although not in Britain, don't count as white in Britain. Um, Cuba got TIR, but no, we're still all one big happy family. Um, so have you read this article, Gene?
Yeah, the New York Times one on Ahmadinejad. It's kind of well. I should begin by saying there was rumors about this going back right down to the initial strike. So this was not something that was totally unknown. There were rumors from the very beginning of the strikes that there'd been some kind of crazy operation that they tried to jailbreak Ahmadinejad because over the last couple of years, Ahmadinejad has been quite critical of the Iranian government. He's taken sort of a position against growing Chinese influence at times. Anyway, he's kind of in the bad books of the regime. So there were rumors that this wasn't an attempt to kill him, but it was a jailbreak. But then there were rumors that he was wounded, and then he went underground after that. And of course, during the initial phases of the war, there was so much misinformation around it. It was like, well, this sounds a little bit far fetched that they were trying to, like, Ahmadinejad was the guy that they were trying to work with. But my general feeling, at least at the moment, is that this is so outlandishly insane that it must be true because I don't think anybody would have thought that Ahmadinejad was the potential Delcy Rodriguez of the Islamic Republic. But as we've seen, by the way, both the United States and Israel have executed this war, the depths of bizarre stupidity can never really be reached. So I was somewhat surprised, but not completely blindsided because, as I said, those rumors have been around since the beginning of the war.
Yeah, I mean, I think the craziest part of this to me, um, I mean, Ahmadinejad's positions have actually struck me as a little bit weirdly woke for a hardliner. Um, and he has been somewhat worried about Chinese influence. He has also pushed back on Iran being too tied in with Russia, which I was surprised to learn, actually. That he was vaguely supportive of Ukraine, not because he likes NATO, but because he believes in national sovereignty. But how he died in this mess is what I think is the most insane part of this. So, for those of you who don't know, at least according to the Times, the attempt to blow him out of house arrest killed him. Now, I don't know how much I believe that, but you're muted, Djene.
I apologize for that. I had a small child escaping from a bath, so I had to briefly deal with that emergency. But yes, Ahmadinejad getting killed or not getting wounded. Well, who even knows? I mean, who even knows? We're not going to find any of this stuff out until the papers pertaining to the operation come out in 25 years, and we'll probably get a slow trickle in the next couple of years. But it just sounds a complete. It just kind of speaks to the fact about perhaps how deluded the intelligence the war planning has been for this war, the utter AI hallucination of a regime change operation that took place. So, I am not 100% surprised that something weird like this would happen. And I'm sure we're going to find other strange war plans. I mean, they've been trying to build Ghalibov and other people from the regime up as like potential people that they can do deals with. But it just seems such a chaotic process. And I think it comes down to the fact that, because a lot of the formal mechanisms through which policy is made, through which expert information is siphoned off to the political class, siphoned upwards to the political class, because those have broken down. I think, probably you have just all these different actors out there with these kind of semi-delusional plans that are being put out there. And this may well have been one of them, that, maybe we can make a deal with Ahmadinejad. He's a nationalist, so he has some internal legitimacy. He's a critic of the regime. He's been critical of China, Russia. Perhaps we can make a deal with him, but it doesn't seem very well thought through. And maybe the Israelis were trying to get him. Maybe they were at odds with the U.S. plan. Remember, Trump at the beginning of the war said, well, we had people in mind who we wanted to work with, but the Israelis killed them all. It seems entirely possible that, the Americans did have such a list, and the Israelis took down people on that list deliberately. Thoughts?
I mean, I am very confused. I'm not sure that the various agencies and military operatives in either of these governments are actually on page with one another, to be quite honest. I mean, I've read reporting about the tensions between Mossad and Shin Bet. I have no idea what's going in the American Joint Chiefs of Staff. I mean, we've heard rumors that Trump has been kicked out of the situation room more than the war room more than once. We also, it seems like, for example, that Pete Hegseth weird Tarantino troll that was actually done by the military upon him. So later reporting was saying that he was given that speech by military brass who just, I guess, wanted to see if he was dumb enough to not realize the difference between a fake and real Bible verse. So I have no idea how cohesive any of these missions are. It does seem to me, for example, that we have seen a concentration effect in politics around this. So what I mean by that is that it's also harder to tell what is going on in terms of the political reaction to it, because it seems quite clear that the Trump White House is not copacetic with itself on quite a few issues. Reporting's come out that, for example, Erica Kirk, of all people, as her own organization, has not been able to leverage the death of her husband for more than a year, and it's actually in steep freefall, has been doing moderations between different factions in the White House coalition, including like bringing in fucking influencers to try to chastise them to maintain the line. With the military, it's just too opaque for us to know what's going on.
I mean, it does seem that the White House is in chaos. There was these recent sort of revelations from I forget what their name is, but the journalist people who do secret recordings. Maybe the chat will remember the name of the person I'm thinking about. But
Project Veritas?
Project Veritas, exactly. Project Veritas were recording Trump officials going on about how crazy the administration is. You have constant reporting about like Stephen Miller being out and then in again, and people acting on their own. But it just doesn't seem that Trump is in full control of everything that goes on in the administration at the moment. So we're in a situation where there's a vacuum opening up. Trump is still the decider. He can say yes or no on things, but he seems a lot more interested in these legacy projects in terms of construction, in terms of, I don't know, there's a reflecting pool, there's the ballroom that looks like it's turning into a huge operation as well. And so that just leaves other areas of policy to be dictated by individuals who are in the right place at the right time, the right institutional power. And I think probably we are seeing there are similar things happening within the intelligence apparatus. I mean, I haven't seen hide nor hair of Tulsi Gabbard for ages, and isn't she supposed to be the sort of director of all the intelligence agencies? You have the FBI in chaos because apparently Kash Patel is too busy on the sauce and
drinking and partying
like a bro. So there's a great deal of like chaos taking place, and in that chaos, things are inevitably crazy things are going to come out. So how true is this story about Ahmadinejad? I mean, it doesn't seem beyond the realm of possibility. I mean, I guess we'll see follow-up reporting.
I mean, it's interesting that we're talking about this also while Cuba has been like 60% black for several weeks. It's very clear that the international community of BRICS isn't coming to Cuba's aid. Mm-hmm. They did send some tankers, both Russia and China did, but they've already burned through that. The island is 60% blackout. There's an indictment coming from Raul Castro for something that happened when he wasn't even in charge.
I know, the Raul Castro stuff. I mean, that just seems very desperate. They're trying to mobilize the kind of last vestiges of anti-communism to revive their political fortunes. I just don't think it works. I mean, I was looking at some of the far right sites today, and they weren't falling for the Raul Castro thing. They weren't impressed. And I think Trump probably is annoyed that he's dragged down in Iran, because he probably believed that this would be a quick operation and he would look strong. But Iran is making it not, more difficult or slower to put the screws on Cuba, which would entirely be a possible operation for the United States to achieve a kind of complete victory. Whereas that complete victory over Iran still seems very elusive, despite people still seeming to believe that it is somehow possible.
I mean, well, I don't know how they think it's possible when we don't anymore have that many places where we have near side base access to Iran.
I can't hear him.
Hi. And
yeah, we don't have the munitions are running low. The world economy is screaming. Yes, theoretically, the United States could deploy what 300, 400,000 troops to Iran, or they could do smaller ground operations. But ultimately, we have seen from intelligence reports that Iran still has a capacity to launch missiles and drones, and so long as they maintain that capacity, a credible threat to the Straits of Hormuz, they're going to be able to put the screamers on the world economy. Petrol prices are rising in the United States, and the United States is particularly vulnerable to petrol prices because so many people in America are dependent on cars to go to work. When you bump the price up from what $2.90 to $4 within a relatively short period of time, that's going to be a shock. And the line is still going up. Maybe it'll go a bit down, maybe it'll go a bit up. But what we're seeing in the markets is not necessarily reflecting the actual price of oil. That's still futures that we're dealing with a lot of the time, which may be a little bit optimistic. So the economic costs are very high. And perhaps more importantly, yes, Iran can't bomb the United States, probably can't even inflict major damage on Israel, but it can inflict a lot of damage on Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar. And, the big difference between that and, let's say, something like COVID is that, how much infrastructure is being destroyed. So even if the war ends tomorrow, what is the implication for the infrastructure? What needs to be rebuilt? What new, even if you get things moving as quickly as possible, you still have this what they call the air gap, right? The period in which production was slow or there wasn't enough production, and that's going to work its way through the system. And then we have to ask ourselves what damage has been done to oil infrastructure and how long is that going to take to be repaired. And if Trump does restart the war, which it seems that he's backed away from again, but you never know, then I think the Iranians, it may be very likely that the Iranians will play hardball this time and start really hitting oil infrastructure and, God forbid, water infrastructure as well, because once you hit the water infrastructure in the Gulf, then we're into really serious territory, because these desalination plants are quite important for creating portable water for people. Obviously, that would be a huge escalation. But if the United States does something, reopens with strikes on Iran's oil infrastructure, there is no doubt in my mind that they'll hit the Gulf oil infrastructure. Also, I think we'll see oil infrastructure in Iraq being hit as well. In the Kurdistan region, where they have oil wells, they've already been attacked as well. Maybe attacks on pipelines. So who knows where this can escalate? And of course, that just makes the economic crisis longer. So we have this problem with this oil shortage already. That's going to work its way through the system. I was talking to someone I know today who was like, well, at least it hasn't reached the point that it did in 2022 under Biden, where it was up to $5. Sure, but that was a kind of temporary crisis caused by a Russian invasion, which the United States was didn't have the same direct control over. But this, I think, the line is still going
up.
Up.
It's higher in California and certain other high density areas because they're more actually dependent on imported oil than the middle of the country. The other thing is, as I'm showing right now, we have oil reserve depletions, which United States is now a major oil producer, absolutely, but we're depleting our reserves to keep the effects at what it is now. You're approaching $7 gas in California, which no one's ever seen. And on top of that, we have looming crises in healthcare, looming crises in the housing market, which can be absorbed for a while because of passive investment, but not forever. And but what's that looming crisis in the housing market? It's that something like 50 to 60% of houses, depending on where you're at, are sitting empty and are not selling, but their prices aren't dropping yet. You can't do that forever. You can do it for longer than people think. Again, large company. Well, actually, when I say large companies, people think it's private equity. It's actually mostly not private equity. It's mostly like millionaire holdings and third and fourth homes. But you can sit on those for quite a bit until the tax bills start coming. But when the tax bills start coming, you start eating into your revenues.
Yeah, I mean, so the geopolitics of this is we're still going to be dealing with the kind of shocks of this, even if some deal is reached relatively quickly. We're in this kind of stalemate at the moment, and frankly, I don't yet see any way out of this impasse. And so long as the world's oil supply is truncated, this problem is going to drag on, and it's going to have deeper effects around the world. Just remember, when the oil price dropped in the 2010s, that was one of the periods when we saw the rise of ISIS, because the Iraqi state no longer had the revenues it had once had to sustain itself, which led to the breakdown of the Iraqi state in the north of the country, and the rise of the Islamic State and its kind of conquest of parts of the country. So there will be political fallout of this for a long time to come. And as I mentioned, and I want to re-emphasize it, we have to consider, at least compared to what happened in the Ukraine war, the damage to the oil infrastructure in the Gulf is, I think, more significant.
Mm-hmm. So, I think we have a couple of things going on here. We have a bunch of geopolitical actions. I mean, Trump still seems to want his war footing. It seems like his cabinet coalition is much more frayed and fragile than before, but Hegseth and somehow Kash Patel survived a whole lot of insanity.
Well, I think the only reason he's surviving is because Trump doesn't want to give the media wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of people who are hanging on by a thread precisely to stop the liberal media getting the win. And Trump has said this regarding Iran as well. Like, he doesn't want the liberal media to make it look like he lost the war.
Right. There's some other interesting things that are tied into oil that are going to make commercial. I mean, because we have such a deregulated market. One is the U.S. is going to try to plug the holes in the international oil market, with which Asia and Europe have been hit pretty hard. Two, refineries are also getting record margins for aviation fuel right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the refineries are focusing on maximizing their jet fuel production at the expense of motor gasoline, just kind of how you saw with AI. Back when we could still get rare minerals to make chips, that's going to be fun. You saw all these chip manufacturers pivot over to enterprise that used to do consumer chips. So the other thing that's kind of interesting is domestic gasoline production has actually dropped this year, which is weird. So we have that as well. You have the tariff costs, which are not insignificant, and even though they've been damaged by a Supreme Court ruling and other court rulings at this point, none of those rebates are going to go back to consumers at all.
We're not going to see any of that tariff money. That's for sure.
And the servicing on the bond market is now getting ridiculously high. furthermore, I mean, we have a bunch of, I mean, the number of things we talk about with Trump is, you know, Jerome Powell stepped away. We have Kevin Walsh, who's promised he's going to lower rates, but will not have the votes in the Fed to do it as long as inflation is the way it is right now. So as long as the stuff is going on in Strait of Hormuz,
inflation
you're not,
inflation will be up,
which means instant rates aren't going to go down. Plus, there probably is a fair amount of demand to keep interest rates up, because that's been some of the money that's been keeping the stock market afloat.
Yeah, the stock market's doing fine, and well, that's actually one of the fundamental issues. I think that, you know, Trump views and a lot of people around him view the stock market as the indicator of the American economy's health, as applied to normal people. But I don't think there's a correlation there at all at the moment, because things are getting expensive and consumer confidence is down. And of course, you know, that is linked to people are unhappy about this war or concerned about this war. And, you know, we're seeing that being reflected in domestic polling as well.
Yeah. If you factor out AI revenues, and I say revenues on purpose because the only parts of the AI that I've seen actually make a profit, if you like factor in outflows versus inflows, is NVIDIA. But the real GDP is annualized at a rate of 2%, which is low. But the last quarter growth is at 0.5%, which is barely above a recession. If you strip away the AI premium, all non-AI baseline GDP growth rates are between 0.8 and 0.1%, which is anemic. It's not a recession yet, but it's anemic.
And if consumers are not confident to spend, and demand goes down, you know, then you're going to have that vicious cycle emerging.
Right. Well, I mean, we already effectively are in stagflation and everything but data centers. Like,
right.
Someone's like, it's hard for me to tell whether I'll flash this up. Whether Trump's unquestioning haphazard non-orthodox political positioning actually exists and improve repositioning Americans' posture or hinders it. Both. Look, the metaphor that I think kind of explains the U.S. to the world right now is that, and we saw this in the Trump visit to China. Almost no strategic goals were really made during that thing, but also China's not in as great a state as it wants to be either. So, in so much you think that it's happening the rise of its competition as repositioning, there is a way which you can argue that, but you have a whole lot of other problems right now. So China, for example, was experiencing kind of a boom after what looked like a lull from 2022 to 2024 and the beginning of the Trump administration. But we've seen a couple of things happen. So we've seen a lot of real estate insolvency, particularly because Chinese citizens hold most of their household wealth and property, just like we do here. Some of that is a effect of some reforms done in the late 1980s, which allowed, basically Chinese baby boomers to own their homes. We've seen a depreciation of land lease sales. in China. We still see relatively high youth unemployment. And there is chronic domestic deflation, which I know we would kill for right now, right? But deflation is also not necessarily a great thing either. So there's,
China has a whole bunch of structural problems, just like every other country. I mean, that's the
right.
first thing to point out. This kind of like China's going to win everything is missing the point. China doesn't want the United States to implode. They have money tied up here. It's a big market, etc., etc. I mean, I'm sure they're not particularly happy that this war has started. Yes, obviously the Chinese probably are not going to mourn some kind of humiliation or decline in American military power or prestige, but at the end of the day, they have a vested interest in maintaining some kind of stability, and they have a vested interest in maintaining some kind of stability within the United States as a huge market. Yes, they can reorientate to other parts of the world, but United States is still a big opportunity for them. It's still an important point of technical transfer, etc., etc. I just don't think the Chinese don't want to knock the entire house of cards down by playing hardball with America.
The thing is, to be a global reserve currency, unless you completely change the global economic framework, you will make your domestic production super expensive in doing so. You will also, if you truly float your currency, you'll be subject to trying to handle and manage the entire world's various currency needs, which is a part of the problem of the forex backs up the world's currency. You can see this, that China is trying to deleverage the dollar. I mean, they're clearly dumping treasuries pretty quickly. But it's also in the fact that it's not, even though they're encouraging some trade in yuan, if you actually look at Chinese policy, they are hedging their bets with real commodities and gold.
Right. And they're still getting short-term U.S. bonds as well, so they're not entirely abandoning the bond market. Yes, I mean, they don't want the United States to be. I mean, what's interesting is that the United States' ability to launch economic warfare on the rest of the world will perhaps be somewhat muted by this if people can increasingly ignore the United States. But China will only want to push so far. After all, they're the one benefiting from the system as well.
So there's a couple asked, why are gas and please price even more? Because we're still going through our strategic reserve. You're also dealing with gas future prices versus actual gas prices. This has always been the case when people wonder why the market doesn't immediately respond. A lot of those gas futures are tied in a passive investment like 401ks. By the way, that's 60% of the entire stock market. And that when people say like, oh, most Americans own stocks, which is nominally true, it's because most Americans have some 401k somewhere that is invested in the stock market. And most of those are in passive or automated investment. There's a lot going on. I mean, the other thing I like to tell people is like, people like, oh, if AI collapses, I'm like, well, if AI collapses, guys, it's not going to kill capitalism. And a lot of the things that you see with AI, the problems it's exposing in academia, in the public service sector, in a lot of white collar work, in what we might call a generationally stratified middle semi-elite. I know that's a long train of adjectives, but it makes a lot of sense if you get where I'm going with this. That has also not really been anything but hyper specialistly competent in a long time. And the problem is when you have an entire society that is hyper specialized in its elite level, is that the only people who can really have a skill that is transferable when anything changes, because everything is so specialized, and the only people who have an incentive to have a broad base of knowledge, frankly, are fucking grifters. And I'm serious about that. Which is why you see so many CEOs who have like no real relationship to their product other than trying to figure out how to extract more immediate shareholder value. I think this is a real big problem that's not going to go away with the fall of AI. I mean, for example, I'm going to talk to you about this AI backlash in a minute, and I'm also not certain that the AI is necessarily going to fail. However, as things currently stand right now, the consumer economy is fucked if it does and fucked if it doesn't. And the productive economy is also that way. And we are seeing major depletions of resources for AI and for other for other kinds of weird projects that don't matter. Happen very quickly. One of the things that people are missing, and I've made this point now 3 times, is that despite Doge and all that talk about Doge, Trump has been incredibly expensive in what he's done. Now, part of it is our supply chain so inflated, but part of it is a lot of stunts are very expensive in terms of payroll. So, for example, there's several $billion have been spent just to keep the National Guard in DC. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I do find it interesting that Europe has been like unable to handle Trump's belligerence as far as understanding where things are at, but they also seem to be it's also hard to say what we could really do right now in light of so many of these different problems, because one of the things that we've seen is the American military has been shown to be a very expensive leverage operation.
Yeah, that's what, and that's going.
Do you want to talk about this? Because like,
yeah, well, I mean, before we pivot to the next topic, I mean, you know, I'll just say one of the things that the kind of war has exposed has been the issue with the U.S. military, and I've seen people write about this. You know, you have a very expensive procurements process. You have all these high-end military products, but of course, warfare has changed in quite a radical way. And the Ukraine war should have, you know, turned us onto this, the importance of missiles and drones. I mean, the United States has this entire navy, but it's unable to force the Straits of Hormuz open with that. And perhaps, you know, in a world where politics didn't matter, they could perhaps brute force it with very heavy casualties. But of course, war is always linked to the political, and it's not, you know, politically feasible to take the kind of losses that might be required to, you know, seize the Straits of Hormuz. So I think we're going to see some interesting developments in the military procurement process, because America has all these expensive weapons. And in many ways, it's kind of the issue that the Germans had in World War II, in the sense that, you know, the soldiers were quite expensive to train. Each soldier was more expensive to train than a Soviet soldier. Their weapons were more technologically sophisticated, more expensive to develop and recruit. In fact, I was talking to some Kurdish guys the other day who were talking about, you know, the AK-47 used to be kind of the main weapon in Kurdistan before the ISIS war. And then, of course, all these American, the M15s came in. And what people have discovered about those M15s is that they're just not as reliable, they are more expensive to repair, and they're kind of more difficult. So, one of the sort of upshots of this war is the fact that a lot of Americans' weapons, not to say that they're quote unquote useless, but that they are not efficient in terms of, how they engage, how they're being used. They're expensive to produce, expensive to maintain, and they can be destroyed with things produced at a much lower price. And I think, if you're the Chinese and looking at this as a military calculation, they're like, well, maybe the Americans could hit us really hard, in a war in the first couple of days, but then our production is going to outdo them. They're going to run out of missiles. They're going to run out of drones, and we're just going to just overwhelm them with slightly inferior but much cheaper to produce weapons, which will defeat them.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is interesting. I wanted to talk about this a little bit if you've been following this at all. The Army is grappling with a sudden budget crunch despite massive injections of cash in the big, beautiful deal. I mean, massive injections. I mean, $1 trillion budget. And they're trying to scramble to slash costs across all the forces. This includes making up a shortfall of $6 billion. So despite the fact that the Army has more money than God, we can't even afford training right now they're cutting training back. They are going to start cutting back elite military schooling for special forces, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The National Guard mission in DC, as I said, has now cost $1.1 billion by itself.
Right.
And despite throwing tons of money at everything, basically, they obviously prioritize that that it doesn't look like we actually have enough money to fund the training of troops. I mean, maybe I thought the AI investment was mostly just a backdoor bailout to keep the AI up and going until they have monopoly powers with at least 2 or 3 companies. But it might actually be also that they are really worried about both the inability of getting recruits from Gen Z and the quality of recruits they get from Gen Z, frankly. And that they don't have as much money for personnel as we think because they're blowing it all on this procurement process.
Yep. I mean, and a very inflated and expensive procurement process where money is just fired into the furnace.
Yeah.
Well, what was our next topic?
Our next topic is the AI backlash.
Yeah, the AI backlash. So I thought this is kind of a good.
I wanted to ask you though before we get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get into it. I mean, I'm living about 2 hours away from where the first hyperscale AI data center is going to be going up. One that we were. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Wonderful's data center, is that the one?
Yeah. Mr. Wonderful's data center, that they use the military economic procurement organization to bypass a local ordinance to build. They actually also changed our water laws so that the water stuff couldn't be manufactured. And they've also launched Project Gigawatt, which will involve 12 nuclear reactors being built in the goddamn desert. In the second driest state in the country. Also, from 2 different sources that I've found, the reactors that they're bringing in are older ones. They're the models from the 70s. And they're only weighted for earthquake zones of up to 3. We regularly have earthquakes here of 6.7 and higher.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Hey, maybe the Great Salt Lake will end up like the Aral Sea because of all this.
Oh, almost everybody thinks it's going to be the Great Salt Lake is just going to cease to exist. Because not only do you need the water to cool off the hyperscale data center, but you also need the water to cool off the rods from the reactors.
Lovely.
They're doing a lot of these things in the desert because they're cheap and out of the way.
I mean, it's from a technical perspective, it makes no sense. You'd want to build data centers in places that are cold and that have plenty of water, but if because land is cheap in the desert, that's the best place to build them, which just shows you how rational everything is. You know, a very rational system that we build it in the desert simply because the land is cheaper. So yeah, so we have you're going to be dealing with that big data center. Are they going to win? Are they going to build it?
So far, because they're changing the laws to make it where oversight's not going to happen. They looked like they were going to push back on the water rights because it's really hard to get water rights normally in Utah. You don't get it just from owning land. Yeah. We also don't know what we're gonna. I mean, like our water is partially based on snowpack, and this area of the high desert plains that they're building this in is right by a lot of that snowpack. It'll be between two of the mountain ranges, and it will raise the temperature in the immediate area about 16 degrees by most evidence, which means that our snowpack is gone. I mean, I am seriously considering, as soon as my partner finishes her degree, getting the fuck out of the Mountain West.
That bad, huh?
Also, my area is now been rated the worst metropolitan area to be a young person in the country because of the explosion of cost versus the availability of jobs. That is a reversal from Salt Lake's status of 3 years ago as one of the best markets for young people in the country. So you're just watching everything go up in smoke. The irony of using a military-based economic development law to do this is also pretty funny, since it brings no economic aid and jobs around the military bases in the area. This is not for national security. I mean, at least they're saying it's not. We're going to see more unstable climate. We're in an El Nino right now. I can't, as far as climate goes, and I know you shouldn't take weather for climate, but this last 2 years, we've had almost no snowfall in the valley, even when we've had decent snowpack on the mountains, because the average temperature is higher. We've had massive inversion clouds. I mean, we have some of the worst air quality in North America already.
Oh no!
And basically, this is a side of what's going to happen if things don't get checked. I don't know how all this works though, because so far AI seems to be destroying a whole lot of the business economy that it was supposed to make more profitable by killing jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is actually a really big issue because AI will, let's be technological optimists about it, that it hasn't, it's going to be useful, right? And it's going to be able to automate many jobs. It's going to be able to automate many manufacturing jobs and certain white collar jobs. And so who's going to be left working? Are we going to end up having issues with demand? If people don't have money anymore because the AI has taken their jobs, then who's going to purchase things? Who's going to purchase the goods and services? Not to go to my favorite topic, which is car prices. There's a reason that you can't buy basic cars anymore. It's because, the high volume, low profit margin is just not seen as a point anymore because people don't think there's demand. They might as well make more profit in the luxury industries. So I think this could have some really serious issues. Let's say, if America's serious about reindustrializing, there will be some jobs created, but a lot of this reindustrialization will be automated through robots and through the extensive use of AI. And you'll have a couple of engineers here, technicians, maybe people who build these things, but like these large numbers of middle class jobs, are they going to exist? It's going to be kind of interesting how you navigate this. I mean, even in areas, let's say in areas such as healthcare, where regulation is definitely going to slow the progress of AI, how are big hospital companies going to use AI to try and cut the cost of expensive doctors? How
They
is
already are.
Yeah, how is AI going to be used in the nursing industry?
So let me tell you one of the things that's happening with AI right now. You increasingly see emergency rooms that are staffed by less and less nurses, and no doctors, because there's one doctor monitoring an AI system that's telling the nurses what to do, and there's fewer and fewer nurses, so there's more aides, and there's already been several deaths linked to this. So this is already happening, Gene. The other thing is, this is going to be exacerbated by the fact that Medicaid and Medicare were the big backstop holding a lot of the hospitals that were not in super profitable urban areas afloat, because so far we haven't figured out how to robotize that, and so you're going to start seeing the big beautiful bill really hit medical access. We're already seeing it, actually. There are a lot of homes now who are dumping people into homeless shelters because their Medicare is running out. And in 20 states, my dudes, we're discovering there are laws from the early 20th century that have never been revoked that says that you are legally responsible for your parents' well-being and health care, even if you're estranged from them. So you're going to have to foot that bill. Which, by the way, the part of the tinfoil hat part of me wonders if this is the last way to like suck up that little bit of Fordist baby boomer wealth that was still around and hoarded up in property, because a lot of people are going to lose their houses at the end of their lives and they're not going to be inherited downwards. And that's already dealing with the fact that the houses that are being inherited are largely not being sold because there's no market for them.
Exactly. Yeah, who can? I mean, you can look at these big big houses, but people just can't maintain them.
Yeah. So you are seeing a lot of the AI boosters on social media start talking about how the AI backlash is non-organic. It's all brainwashing. It's Chinese spies. Funny coming from Kevin O'Leary, a fucking Canadian. In fact, almost none of these motherfuckers are citizens. I'm not a jingoist, but I'm not a jingoist, but the idea that that America's for Americans when like almost all these tech oligarchs are foreigners anyway, it's kind of something else. The other thing is private equity is getting into everything, including the trades. So we've seen trade demand collapse and a lot of trade jobs get made worse because everyone was told to go into it and it's been hostilized. And then I talked about this on another show. I've been watching liberals get all like finger waggy at men. They're like, oh no, you just wouldn't go into these female fields. There's not work for them in the female fields except for nursing. And even that's not easy to do. The idea, I'm really sick to death of liberal moralizing on like broad gender stuff. That also is being cut by this government because they're like, oh, only 1 out of 5 female jobs and 1 out of 3 male jobs are being affected. And I'm like, they've gutted healthcare and the big beautiful bill is going to roll out. And you guys were even complaining about a year ago. What does that affect the most? Healthcare. What are you on? Like, why do you feel the need to be smug assholes at the expense of building any coalition to fucking survive?
I mean, that's kind of what liberals do, isn't it? Their entire politics is built on being smug assholes towards conservatives.
The thing is, though, they're not just being smug towards conservatives. I mean, they're being smug towards everyone they perceive might be conservative.
Well, it's nihilism. Libs are in a bit of a nihilistic mood because they're in the "I told you so" mode at the moment. Still, no.
I mean, maybe
people are mad.
They don't have an answer to any of these problems.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, the fundamental problem is that AI could be very liberating, just as the Industrial Revolution could have been very liberating. It could make people's jobs easier. You could use AI to like assist in, I don't know, particular ways in your job. That would make your life easier and give you less stress, right? Could reduce the work week, but of course that's not how it's going to be used. Why would the company have 5 people, on the same salaries working less because of AI when they could just fire 3 of those people and make the other 2 use AI? Because of course,
not hiring. I mean, they're not even firing people; they're just not hiring anyone at all. Like
no, like people searching for jobs.
I mean, the other thing is we are in a shrinking economic pool and have been for years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just difficult for people to find jobs. Like the advice, people are giving us: if you're in a job, don't quit, because it's difficult to find something new. I mean, even the low end jobs, that people talk about, they're trying to get rid of the McDonald's workers, aren't they? So that you all use the stupid app and things like that. It's but it seems like a very destructive.
Well, there's also no profitability in that sector of the economy right now, Gene. Have you been like looking at what's happened with franchises? Like,
franchises.
They are losing money hand over fist.
Yeah, because people can't afford. People can't afford to go and eat fast food because it's too expensive. If you have 2 people,
I mean, I think go ahead.
A family of 4 eating at a fast food restaurant is going to be spending what, $35, $40 at least.
Mm-hmm.
That's too expensive for a lot of families. Smart people are buckling down, and other people just don't have money. So it's. I don't think the AI thing is going to change everything overnight, but I think you're going to have this grimmer kind of outlook for young people looking for jobs. And there will be jobs in healthcare, there will be jobs, but a lot of those jobs are being degraded anyway, right? So maybe the job exists, but the pay is 25% lower. It's like, let's say, with translators, right? They get the AI to do a translation, and then they hire a translator to correct the AI where it's made mistakes. But of course, the translator doesn't get paid the same as they used to get paid when they actually did the translation. Somebody asking about my multiple light bulbs in this room, right? There are many light bulbs, but they are all looking after my friends.
No, that's
look. That's my human eating plants, and there's my there's a Venus flytrap over there. The Nepento's moved, and over in that corner there's my herb bucket. See, I'm preparing for the end. I'm growing all my own vegetables in the house. There you go.
I mean, one of the things that we have found, though, is like so far the token cost of actually running AI over human workers is much higher. And given the fact that they're trying to build monopsony pricing into this, there is no incentive for those to go lower. There is no competition between these 5 or 6 firms in pricing at all. And they're trying to force usage. You see this at Google throwing everything behind Gemini to the point that next week they're going to get rid of traditional search for the AI moderated search as their only major product. So, but I want to ask you a question. I have my theses on this, and I'll talk to you about what I think they are. But why is it that after years of going broke for woke, and doing the moral mission thing, you have almost every major university, be they elite or land grant hub schools or whatever, doubling down on AI and having people go and boost AI at their graduations, mocking their own students effectively for wasting money on a degree.
Well, you know as well as I, the ruling elite of the university is not the same as the professors of the university,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
You have
I'm
the
aware.
board. You usually have a board comprised of local business people, or perhaps like local personalities, and then you'll have an upper cadre of leadership in the university who are technically often coming out of law backgrounds, a lot of lawyers, or people who have these PhDs in things such as educational leadership, things like that. So, the elites of the universities are exactly the type of people with a kind of quasi business mentality. And so they bring, this has been a big push, especially I would assume in conservative states, is to have like a closer kind of idea of like universities should be providing job training for people. And so you have that very much kind of business orientated, business school mind within the university leadership. And what is the prevalent cultural fad within the business world at the moment? Of course, it's AI. So it strikes me as eminently predictable that university leadership
Yeah. I work in public schools too.
Jumping in.
Meters skip the admin love AI. Yes, they love AI because it reduces their administrative jobs and they can just do nothing. The irony is now that you have so many legal compliance officers and whatnot in schooling that the real cost of schooling has gone up dramatically, but it's not on the teacher end, it's on the administration end. And in public schools, they want to use this. I mean, they are using it. We've been mandated to use AI for certain things. I was told not to ever accuse a kid of cheating, even if I had hard evidence, to write a diplomatic letter with the AI to handle the situation. But I was going to push on this a little bit. I agree with you, Djene, but I want to talk to you about why I think this is happening beyond just the business orientation of schools. I think it is a raw economics calculation. So one of the things that came out in 2022 and 2023 is how much the elite and the hub land grant schools don't make money off of tuition. They don't give a shit about their undergrads. For community colleges and liberal arts schools, the demographics that are going to liberal arts schools are declining rapidly. The demographics that would go to community colleges are just forgoing college altogether. So you had the federal government basically using these universities as a massive R&D, that was tied in and downstream of DARPA. What we have seen in the Trump administration is that DARPA development's been more and more outsourced to AI, and after Doge, a lot of the grants and stuff dried up, not just for the humanities, but even for the hard sciences. The amount of money that these schools get from grants is hard to underestimate. It's probably much larger than their tuition money. And so now they got to go to industry to get things. So I don't just think it's like an ideological alignment between like these red state universities and whatnot, because you're not just seeing it at red state universities, you're also seeing it at like Yale and Harvard.
Right. So you think they want to try and get money from the AI overlords?
Yeah, I do.
It's probably a bit of column A, it's probably a bit of column A and column B. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt, especially that these big universities want to get a piece of the AI pie. I mean, increasingly, it just feels like education is not seen as particularly important. Universities. I mean, the point is that universities were never designed to be job training centers, but they've tried to turn them into job training centers. But the economy changes so rapidly now that you're going to train people in a whole bunch of quote unquote hard sciences, and it's going to be hard for many of them to pivot. People were told to code, but now the jobs for those kind of jobs are disappearing. Yes, there's engineering and electrical jobs and all those kind of things still exist, but that is also a competitive field as well, and takes a certain amount of technical skill and ability to do. So, it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. I mean, the ultimate problem with the AI thing is it's just that it's in the hands of a few oligarchs with the US government funding them, and there's no democratic control or popular oversight over how this technology gets deployed. It's just getting chucked into the water like, chum, and nobody knows what's going to happen. So it's causing all this anxiety, it's causing this disruption, and people are turning against it because they don't know where it's going to end. And it doesn't help that all these stories are coming out. You have all these executives hyping it up, saying that it's going to replace all these jobs. Maybe it won't be as effective at replacing the jobs as quickly as possible, but they're going to try and do it. I mean, one of the reasons companies adopt the term AI and everything nowadays is because it boosts their stock value. So there's the whole cycle of that going on. And as someone says in the comment, yes, also they're going to surveil people.
Oh yeah, it's a massive surveillance state. So this is the problem, though, from a Marxist accounting record, and I'm going to be a good Marxist economist here. The problem with rents as your primary driver of economics is that they allow for hoarding but not growth. So, and eventually the hoarding becomes really hard to do. So, for example, once you have used like ground rents to a certain point, you have to start extracting labor and not coinage or even product. You start doing labor shares and sharecropping and whatnot. That requires a massive state apparatus to enforce. And so all this stuff about how the tech oligarchs are really libertarians, no, they're fucking not. And they've never been. They didn't get this way by being libertarian. They got this way by government contracts. They love the state because it helps them enforce their rents. But the cost of that has to come from somewhere. This is why all these techno-neo-feudalists are like, oh, they're just going to do techno-neo-feudalism. Off of what, though? Once you extract so much nominal value and real value from the economy, there is nothing left to extract. That is not a long-term proposition. So,
husk of an American people.
I mean, Americans could go to like, what there are how many billions of people in the world right now? Like 7, 8 in there, somewhere there. The global population is declining now, but nonetheless, but only 1 billion people on the planet live off of more than $32 a day. I do like to remind people of that. Now, that's not in purchasing power, that's in raw numbers. So the purchasing power varies greatly. But it is something to think about so only 1/8 of the world's population is really at in nominal wealth, even over $32 a day in income. So what I've been talking about is the peripheralization of the core. This is a concept I got from thinking about world systems theory, but also Alex Hochuli over at BungaCast has talked about it. And I think it's inevitable at this point. because traditional commodity production is not super profitable right now. It's just not. But it is interesting because AI still proves some Marxist stuff. The only parts of AI that were immediately profitable in terms of actually turning a profit and growing the thing and not just growing outflows was the data centers and the NVIDIA chips. So it is still physical commodities that hold all this shit together. So the idea that you can just get rid of that. I mean, you do basically have to believe what Peter Thiel believes is like this is worth destroying most of humanity and almost all life on Earth for. But yes, the oligarchs, as Drunk Alex says, were never libertarians, but they're happy to fund a bunch of media creatures to propagandize it to credulous journos and electeds as if they were, partly because the anger with the state is somewhat legitimate. I want to pivot though to something I didn't say I was going to talk about, but I do want to talk about because I'm going to file this under. I have good news about the DSA and bad news about the DSA. Good news is DSA insurgent endorsees, particularly even some of the more radical ones like Rab and Philly, won most of their seats that were available last night. The bad news, however, is all the DSAers who were telling me about how Mamdani has fixed the New York budget because they don't understand how budget works and they didn't look at what Mamdani's budget actually is. It has not been fixed by the Pet-a-terre tax, and I want to talk about this a little bit. I'm going to flash this article up, which debunks a conservative talking point, but also debunks a whole fucking lot of progressive ones. So this is Mamdani and Menon status quo budget. This is from Ghost Runner, and it does an analysis of how this budget was actually achieved. And I'm just going to go through the major things here. One is a giant influx of aid from the state government. So Ho-Chil had to give 1.5 billion to shrink the gap, the budget gap from 7 billion to 5.5 billion. There was a relaxation of obligations from the state, which meant stuff like looser implementation of class size mandates. Laying off employees with short tenure, that sort of thing. But the biggest thing, and I'm going to show this right here for everyone to see it, is the accounting magic. And I'm going to read this, Gene, so people can get
go for it.
Because this 3 weeks ago, a New York Times Sally Goldberg reported that Mamdani was considering pension restructuring to fill the budget gap. Fiscal watchdogs like the Citizens Budget Commission, Andrew Wayne, found this extremely ominous because delaying pension obligations is a municipal budget equivalent of racking up credit card debt, permanently devastating your long-term financial future in order to prop up an unstable present-day spending. Happily, this is not exactly what Mamdani is doing. Instead, he is adjusting the amortization schedule, a 20-year payment plan the city agreed to in wake of the 2008 financial crisis. Basically, the city took out a giant loan to meet their pension obligations in 2008 to stay solvent, and because also they're not allowed to run a deficit by law. Then bizarrely agreed to make extremely high payments towards the loan until 2032, and then start receiving a portion of those payments back from 2033 on. After the new restructuring, they will make lower payments until 2033, and then make smaller payments towards forward instead of receiving money back. Basically, as the graph shows, we are smoothing out a repayment schedule into a more sensible flat shape. Fiscal alarmist comptroller Mark Levine gave this decision his blessing, telling the Times it made sense to avoid a big cliff in 2032. But moving forward, the blue line in the graph above to the green line will save the city a full $2 billion over the next 2 years, and it will not affect actual pensions because this is a repayment for a loan, not a pension account themselves. So that's good, but the city will only generate a $500 million from the Pet-a-terre tax that he's been celebrating, the tax on the rich who make over $5 million and it's a second home and they have to not live in it and that's assuming all that stays stable. So in the long run, though, this is going to be a problem because they can't raise state income taxes because Hochul thinks that it might cause capital flight. I think it's right, actually. And there are some reasons why I think that. We can get in that in a minute. And there aren't enough progressive state legislatures to change their mind. They can't pass a toll through the pass-through entity tax because that would infringe on a hedge fund partner's God-given right to uncapped state and local tax deductions. They can't raise property taxes because the city's property tax system disproportionately burdens small apartment buildings and working-class black neighborhoods. That's what he was originally going to try to do, and a lot of DSA was for it until they realized that it would actually hit the poor more than it would hit homeowners because, rents are going to go up. Yeah. Rents are going to go up in the poorest neighborhoods if they do, and it's going to also make rent control a lot harder to implement. And they can't raise revenue in any other way. So all the good news is dependent on things not getting worse economically in the next year. And I think there's two reasons to be worried. One, there is an attempt to end the Wall Street monopoly on stock trade. Now, you're from England. What happens when you're a finance hub and then when people talk about, people won't run out of the city. And I'm like, okay, if it was manufacturing or whatever, I might believe in you. But finance is fucking fluid. And the only thing that ties it all into New York is the monopoly the New York Stock Exchange has.
Right. I mean, we'll see what happens with that.
That's a legal creation.
I know they want to build one in where is it? Austin, right? They're trying to move all the stuff to Austin. I don't think that's going to happen, though.
Mm-hmm.
Big tech tried to dump California. How did that go? Not perfectly. They went to Austin, and then a lot of them want to go back, right? So, I mean, we'll see. But
I mean, they want to go back only because of where the current Silicon Valley development is in AI, though. Like, it wasn't because they're stuck on that. I know progressives like to think everybody will just stay, but I'm sorry, Gene, but England proves this is not true.
Yeah, but even the English financial sector didn't entirely collapse. A lot of stuff moved, but not everything moved. Maybe things will move, but maybe I just don't know if I can imagine Trump allowing something like, at least under the Trump administration, because he's such a New York guy. You know what I mean? Yes, obviously, maybe he wants to screw Mam Dandy, but also he's like a New Yorker at the heart of it. So maybe under a future administration, but I don't see it under this administration, that they'll allow like a new financial hub in Texas. Maybe if Vance becomes president, maybe. I don't know. You would know better than me, but I'm skeptical about whether that change is going to take place. I mean, it was truly in Britain's term, it was like Britain literally forced their hand in a way that couldn't be avoided, by leaving the EU. It's not exactly the same situation here in New York.
I mean, we'll see, but Y'all Street is still scheduled to go live in July, and it does have the backing of BlackRock, Citadel, Goldman Sachs, and Bank of America.
Y'all Street. We'll see how Y'all Street works out. It's so embarrassing, but Y'all Street.
Okay. But let's talk about this AI backlash again, because I do think it's only going to intensify. Because we so far what we've seen is, I mean, I do wonder, like, we are creating a social reproduction crisis. You have tons of young people, tons of young men. 1 in 3 men now are not working, and yet our unemployment rate is very low, which tells you they've completely left the job market. You have a country that's saturated with guns and unemployed men. Historically, that doesn't go well. Maybe that's why they want the surveillance state, but I don't know what, there's a limit to what robots can do. We've seen that with the Houthis. So,
well, you hire one half of the men to police the other half of the men.
Well, you have to be able to pay your bondholders to keep the money to do that, though.
True. I mean, yeah, it seems all this growing youth unemployment is a serious problem, because it's not just about people with university degrees. It's like every segment of society.
No, actually, blue-collar men have been disproportionately hurt by the last 2 years of the economy. Manufacturing has slowed dramatically.
And also the green building, the building of the solar panels and the wind turbines is slowed as well. So it's pretty. I mean, I think we'll just see. I don't know how it will play out politically, but certainly I think we'll see more social violence. More kind of like random shootings and just violence. It's all. It's like people are kind of feeling hopeless, and I think you'll just end up with more of these kind of shooters around and bar fights and just nonsense taking place.
I mean, I do think what you're also going to see is like warehouses and data centers being hit, frankly.
Yeah.
We've already seen it.
I think that's inevitable too. We're going to have the neo-Luddites turning out to firebomb data centers. People hate them. And it's, when you hear the noise coming out of them, you can totally understand it as well. People are like shocked about it. It's like environmental impact. It's like it's not even something that's kind of hidden. It's like something right up in your face that you can't avoid, that drives up your electricity prices, pollutes your water, pollutes your ears with its noise. And so people are going to get mad about it.
So I wanted to talk about the Madani budget and stuff, because I actually do think I wanted to talk about it because on one hand I think progressives sound naive. On the other hand, I mean, they always sound naive. They always sound really naive, actually. But on the other hand, Mandani has managed to not do so far, and we are very young into this administration.
Don't give Van hope, Mamdani.
What other progressives have done, which is to like try to screw the Bob market and then realize how much power they don't actually have as mayors. But it is hard for Mamdani to keep the left wing of his coalition happy while also trying to appease what he perceives as normies and increasingly trying to become an Obama face to the Democrats, which that is clear he is trying to do. And the Democrats are torn on him because they wanted to destroy him, but they also see how popular he is. So, to co-opt him would be great. We need to remind ourselves they did that to Obama too.
Mm-hmm.
So even though Obama was a product of the machine in the way Mamdani won, I mean, Adolf Reed talked about that, like, I think in the 90s.
In the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. But people forget how nasty the 2008 Democratic primary was. Like,
it was a nasty.
So, I mean, when people talk about this, I feel like I've seen all this before, and it makes me wonder, because I'm really torn right now. The DSA is actually seeing like Tea Party like
insurrection.
Wins. Yeah,
I mean,
mm-hmm.
There are wins. There have been. It has been surprising, but also not surprising, I guess. But you never believe it until you see it. But the kind of insurgent people have not lost everything, as we've been used to for the last couple of years. I remember since 2018, people have been talking about this kind of socialist wave taking over the Democratic Party, but now I wouldn't call it a wave, but certainly there seems to be kind of more outspoken, quote unquote, left figures come winning in primaries. You had Rab in Philadelphia, who won a primary against the black political machinery in the city, which was kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah, and the union political machinery too. This is one of the things that I have actually pointed out, and I'm like, the DSA is up against not just the Congressional Black Caucus, and Mandani has had some issues with that himself. Even Geese Magazine has said something about it, like his favoring of the Congressional Black Caucus against younger black leaders. But the other thing I would say is that all the union leadership supported the same candidates as well, and they all lost too. And I want to remind people, a lot of the unions supported Cuomo, not Mandani. One of the weirder things to deal with right now, and this is a problem that isn't obvious because it hurts the DSA's narrative in two ways. One is that the union leadership is more implicated, even when it goes rank and file, in the standard Democratic Party line than they want to deal with. And two, rank and file unionization has hit hard walls as the places where it's happened. The rank and file unionization have either cut right, like in the Teamsters. The other O'Brien, I forget his first name, was a rank and file guy in the Teamsters union. And or they've been structurally limited like the UAW. And in areas where there just isn't a lot of growth. So you have this issue where the union leadership is backing establishment Dems. And one of the things that people aren't looking at is a lot of these unions, they're like, you'll hear like liberals say, oh, the workers aren't really supporting. Well, a lot of these unions don't get to vote on who their PAC endorses.
Right.
I know that mine, I don't. I have no say in who even the local PAC endorses. There's absolutely no, it's all decided by staffers. Yeah, Sean O'Brien. I thought it was Sean O'Brien. Yeah. And the Teamsters? Yeah, probably. The other thing that you've had is like the small unionization movement around Starbucks and whatnot has really hit a wall. And you see a lot of the DSA actually kind of abandoning it, which is going to be interesting. They're not abandoning it formally in any sense, but like they're not pursuing it right now in the same way. So Sean O'Brien and the other, and yeah, no, it's a tale of two Seans. It's Sean O'Brien and Sean Fain. It's not a tale of two O'Briens. Thank you.
Tale of two O'Briens. I like that one actually.
So tale of two Seans. So Sean Fain has a structural problem that the UAW is in a dying industry, and its attempts to get out of the dying industry has become like a piecemeal union in a bunch of sectors that aren't related to its primary industry, like TAs and small shops and sometimes bars. You see this also with the CWA. And it's led to like a lot of real excitement about new unions, but they're very small shops that aren't going anywhere. Union density seems to be still declining. And so it's hard to see what the strategy is. I mean, this is the thing that I'm actually sort of just torn on. On one hand, we're seeing a lot of these DSA electeds win. But there's a path dependency problem that these DSA electeds have never actually anywhere, with the exception of Mandani in New York, and we don't know how well that is and how much it's going to stick, been able to get a whole lot of policies through, whether they were mayors or in Congress or in city council.
They don't have the power to discipline them.
No.
So, we'll see how it goes. But I would say simply on the primary, thing. It is interesting that the mood in the country, at least amongst the Democratic primary, is definitely quite different from how it was 2 years ago.
Well, let's throw the bastards out, but I have noticed that's only cut in the DSA's favor in progressive cities. If you look at the state level and whatnot, it tends to cut in conservatives' favor, like that governor in Virginia who just vetoed workers' protection plan. What's her name? She has CIA ties.
Yeah, I know who.
I mean, so you have this insurgent mood right now that is just the throw the bastards out move.
Yeah, but the point I would make with the Virginia election, and then her name is escaping me at the moment, the CIA congresswoman, that was in the first year of Trump's term, and you still had. I think things are things are moving rapidly. I think the whole Michigan stuff has been really kind of funny. How Third Way attempted to elevate Hassan Piker into some kind of boogeyman, and that seems to have backfired. Or that election in New Jersey where AIPAC tried to, run against the incumbent who had been mildly critical of Israel, only to have their AIPAC endorsed person come third. And
what AIPAC has done though is they showed they controlled the GOP.
Oh, that's for sure. The lead paint huffing boomers can be swayed. I mean, it shows you that the Republican Party is ultimately controlled by the over 55, the over 60.
Right. Well, I was actually just watching a thing about this. Trump's support was actually about 50-50 young old in 2024. It's almost all over 55 now.
It's really generational. Yeah, the generational split in the Republican Party is quite stark. I think the loss of Massey is actually my suspicion is that it's going to bite the Republican Party in the butt, because Massey is the kind of figure who could keep part of that coalition with in the Republican Party, in the sense, and that's just going to exacerbate the alienation of the soft young Republicans. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually think Massey could win if he went independent. I don't know that he will.
It would be interesting. It would be an interesting run if he did.
We're gonna see how Plattner does soon. Now that he's out of his contestation, we're gonna see.
There's a lot of pearl clutching from Fox News about Plattner, which I think is just going to help him.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I remember when Tucker was doing all this anti-Mondani merch, and I was like, I kind of want some of it because it makes Mondani look cooler. Right. Comparing Mondani to Lenin is not a way to lose my vote. And I actually think that's probably true for a lot of younger people.
I mean, that's what's happening. A lot of these establishment gate. That's what happened with the whole Hassan Piker thing in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
They tried to elevate a scary person, only to discover that a lot of the Democratic Party base were like, actually, these guys sound more reasonable than you.
And he's not that scary.
No, this is the whole thing about Hassan Piker. He's just a New Deal Democrat who
he's a New Deal Democrat with Maoid characteristics.
Yeah, exactly. That's all. He's very moderate kind of guy who's actually quite open about his political project, which is to reform the Democratic Party.
Right. I mean,
there's nothing hidden there. It is what it is. You get what you sign up for on the tin.
I mean, I was reading him defend an article that I like, actually, and I was like, man, this guy is not nearly as scary as these. I mean, both some of his fans and definitely his enemies want to paint him out. I mean, the same with Mondani, really.
Oh yeah,
Mondani's just more competent than expected by pretty much everybody, except for the diehard DSAers. And I'm heartened by it, but I'm also worried about it, because the other thing that we've seen is that the one part of this we haven't talked about was the DSA did well in every one of its districts but California, where it flamed out massively.
Didn't they have a civil war though?
Yeah, they did. So
Not surprising then. I mean, yeah, it's going to come down to where it's going to come down to local branches in DSA, isn't it? Whether you have a competent bunch of local branches. I can imagine the San Francisco or the LA DSA is kind of like annoying.
But they're not radical, Gene. I mean, that's not why they're annoying.
Yeah, I know, but that's a whole different kettle of fish. They can still be annoying and factional and cliquey and ineffective.
I mean, the New York branch, which is the most effective branch and the largest, with a fifth of the organization in it, effectively, it can be kind of annoying and cliquey and weirdly anti-democratic, and doesn't play well with the rest of the DSA, including the National. So, and despite the fact it's like overwhelmingly what drives growth right now, I mean,
they are kind of effective.
I mean, I do think it's interesting. They are effective, but they're not. I'm going to say this, Gene. We have not seen mass policies delivered, and we are entering a time of austerity. The federal money is not going to be there. I'm not sure the New York State money is going to be there for a whole lot longer.
It's going to be. It's. I mean, I think a lot of it's going to depend. Yeah, because the money's running out, and there hasn't. What's the big policy win? Democrats have had no big policy wins since. I mean, I guess Obamacare, which wasn't really that great.
They would argue the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay.
And maybe that's it. Like, and locally, I guess like you have childcare and state subsidized grocery stores in New York.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It's still really too early to see if Mamdani is going to be able to deliver, right? But he's done some very popular stunts, the pothole thing and the snow clearing. We'll see how it goes.
He's a great retail politician. I guess, Gene, though, my fear is like he's also built up a lot of expectations.
Yeah, that's going to be the problem, because what is he going to be able to deliver on? I mean, he ran on a very clear sort of planks, right? So he'll be judged against those planks. Like, does he get the childcare in? Does he deal with the housing? Those are going to be questions. The housing is the one that I think is going to be the most difficult nut to crack, because that's like a long-term policy that, can't be resolved in a year or two.
No. He already delivered on the childcare, though. That legislation got passed by the governor. Yeah, but you need the governor to pass it. Rent stabilization is another plank. Guys, I am in the DSA. I know all your fucking talking points. So, and I'm aware of what happens.
Stop hitting Vaughn with the talking points. He doesn't deserve it. He hasn't earned.
I actually said that Hochul passed helped Mamdani pass the childcare thing. So I did include that in policies that we've won. The thing is, though, that kind of thing is not something you can control. That is up to the governor and the state house.
That's one of the problems Mamdani has. He's promised a lot, but there are a lot of things that are not entirely in his control as the mayor of New York City. And he's going to have to play well with others if he's even going to achieve parts of his agenda, like you said.
And that's going to piss off a lot of his DSA base, honestly. You already see it. Like, I'll keep my mouth shut on some of that stuff, because I don't always think I think some of his concessions aren't going to help him. But like when people get mad at him for, finger wagging at like people doing Israel is Nazi flags and whatnot, I'm like, what do you expect in New York City?
They want to get that woman like the woman in Texas, so she can set up the camps.
Yeah, Mandani proposals is why he's different than other Dems. He actually has policy proposals. Well, I will say Brandon Johnson had policy proposals. He ran straight into the bond market wall. He just, boom, unprepared for it. And I hate to tell you this, but even at national levels, when I look at the history of SOC Dems doing this kind of stuff, the walls tend to be hard in about 2 to 3 years. Do I need to remind you of Mitterrand or the entire history of the Socialist Party in Italy? Or I can just go on.
It's going to get. I mean, ultimately, there's a couple of things. Like, frankly, playing the devil's advocate here, on a national level, I think a successful Democratic politician needs to run on doing one big thing that is going to make you a lot of enemies, but you can only do that one thing. Like if you want Medicare for all, okay, it can be done, but that's going to be the entire presidency. It's going to take up all the juice of that presidency, all the brain power or AI power or whatever it is to do that. It's doable, but nothing else will be done. And Medicare for all will be a great thing, but it doesn't solve like a whole bunch of other structural issues in the country. What do you think, Ron?
I mean, like, look, when people talk about the reforms, Medicare for all is the one that you can get me on, be like, yes, good. I don't even think it's socialist, by the way. At this point, I just think that's how you manage market risk, because every other damn country on the planet does something like it. However, if you look at all the places that do have this kind of medical, it's a fight constantly to maintain it, particularly depending on how it's set up. If you provincialize it like Canada, you can underfund it at the national level and turn people against it, and then encourage things like mass suicide.
That's the Canadian way.
Yeah, well, that's the Canadian way.
In America, you just dump him in the homeless shelters and let nature take its course, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have to feel bad that you're doing euthanasia. You're just letting the market decide.
But I do think at the same point, the cost, the drain of the medical bureaucracy on the economy is massive. It's massive. And it's now being passed on the consumer directly, which is one of the ironies of the Obamacare answer, is because there are no cost controls in the ACA. There were none. And without the subsidies, the ACA just means that those lack of cost controls will be passed on to the consumer. Those subsidies are now gone. And guys, our federal government is in crisis on paying the interest on those bonds. I know the MNTers aren't wrong. We can't run out of money. That's not the problem. The problem is your money is only as valuable as the bond market will let it be. And the MMTers don't want to deal with that. So even though they're right, their fundamental assumption is right, but they don't want to deal with the bond market limit, because that's what ties you into the Forex reserve, is the bond market. If you don't have the tie into the Forex reserve, your money might be infinitely valued domestically, but you don't produce everything domestically. Nobody does. So you have a problem. The Democrats have gotten to a weird position in regards to the Fed. I mean, there have been some progressives who actually do realize this, where they're defending the independent Fed to basically raise prices on everybody to pay out to the rich to fight inflation, which is not able to fight inflation, because inflation here isn't caused by things that have to do with everyday liquidity and
Look, man, I'm trying to save money in my high interest account, so put those interest rates up for me, baby.
I've been doing the Djene thing and having my index funds increasingly in stuff like poor people groceries.
Poor people groceries. It's where it's at, man.
um,
although what's his name? Dollar General has dropped down from a high of 150 a share back down to about 105. But it's okay. Staying with investors.
There are two apps right now who are automating copying the insider trading of Congress as a way to get your.
That's so good. That is so good.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know, Gene. I wanted to talk about the last big thing that this is from Twitter, which you're not on. Today, there's been a debate about the Lumpen proletariat. About whether or not they're the revolutionary class, which they're not even a class. It's like the PMC. People like classes that aren't classes. Even in Marx, they're not a class. I agree with Clive Burrow that they're a social category that are people who are basically forced out of all kinds of different classes, although today they are mostly proletarian.
They're what Rapsy Nesbitt called scum.
Right. My problem with the whole debate is there is no revolution in history that has been left-wing, led by people dependent on state subsidies and strongmen to survive. But also the idea that we are going to be against the lumpen is nuts when you have lumpen traits across the entire class spectrum of all strata of the working class up and into the quote unquote PMC. I call them the PMS now, or the I also call them the post petit bourgeois sometimes in my book with Daniel Tutt because of Nicholas Polancis. Post petit bourgeois because they've been partially proletarianized. But
the podcast class.
Yeah. But I really don't.
Can I just jump in here quickly about?
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. PMC is kind of a cool word, but let's be honest, it's just like Catherine Liu made it popular because she's just pissed off with the wankers she has to deal with in the faculty lounge.
Right.
That's all it's about. Right?
Well, the other reason it's popular is like the DSA comes from the working class, but it's all the working class strata from that.
Right.
I mean, like it really, like in New York, where the DSA is huge, right? It's like between 12 and 15,000 just in that city. It is barely represented in, I think, Staten Island, and it isn't represented at all in the Bronx. Its strongest points are Brooklyn, Manhattan. Those are the two biggest borough subchapters are. I forget what they're called actually now. But I mean, the other thing is what was getting called lumpen. I saw someone say that it's definitionally true that all disabled people who work are lumpen.
What? Where are these people getting
lumpenization is not about. Yeah. Oppressed lumpen is the axis of progressive politics in my city. Yeah, with the PMC too. You know, that's or the PMS, as I like to call them. That is who makes up most of progressive politics, because progressive politics, however, requires an impossible class base in the state to try to paper over class divisions. That's what it requires. That's why I'm not a progressive.
I mean, and also lumpen just means like what?
Lumpen in Marx does not have a coherent definition. And I know that makes people mad, but it doesn't.
But the word lumpen is literally just a term from German to talk about like scum, like people who are in rags. Is it rags or something like that? You know, like people who are stupid, uneducated.
Right.
just lazy people. It's a moral condemnation.
Right.
It's like more of a moral condemnation of people acting like freaking thugs and gangsters. So, like you say, lumpen traits exist over all social classes, really.
Right. Marx has two theories as to where it comes from. One, he says it's the refuge of the prior social order, and the other is the people forced out of the current social order. My point that I'm going to make about lumpen, because I make it in my book, which you all should buy, with Daniel Tutt. I didn't write about myself, but this is something Daniel and I have been working on. We've been talking about the lumpenization of all classes, including the bourgeoisie. And what I mean by that is the atomization and commodification of public space, leading to more and more atomized traits, which leads to things like drug addiction, antisocial behavior, and psychosis. That is not, for me, a moral condemnation. All right. I don't care about what side of the law someone is on, but those traits tend to make people dependent on people within their own class or on strongmen. That's historically what happens. So, and you think about it, for example, one of the Democrats' big arguments about us ever doing anything to like fix a lot of the problems is like, but think about these people who are helped by this marginal program that's totally dependent on this other bullshit we do. That's the problem. Now, the reason why I turned it into a verb is because I'm tired of using it as people using it as a way to like just talk about people as if we can eliminate all these people. It's just like, yeah, we're just going to kill all the drug addicts. That's insane. Actual communists did not actually do that, despite whatever rhetoric they said. You know, what Mao did, actually, the whole brainwashing misunderstanding or propaganda, depending on which side of the story you believe about why it happened, was them taking the non-hostile classes, which were normally things like sex workers, non-violent traders, people who were not hostile to the working class, and trying to proletarianize them properly, aka help them get a job, and integrate them into the communist society by getting a job. That was the whole thing they were doing. So I don't want to kick out the lumpen. I don't think that's smart. I also don't think most drug addicts want to be drug addicts. Speaking as someone who's fought addiction myself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, I kind of hate when we think that why people are a political subject is this because they suffer. Suffering doesn't make anybody into anything in specific.
Yeah, I know. People really love the old suffering, don't they?
Yeah.
But that's the people. It's like very Christian, isn't it? It's like reminds me of Mother Teresa enjoying watching people suffer because it brings her closer to Jesus.
Right. So
Strip the Christian from your mind, communists.
Right. So I'm not like pro or anti-lumpen, whatever the hell that means. I want us to deal with the social pathologies that come from class decomposition, hyper-specialization, and the commodification of all public space.
I'm against the lumpen, right? I'm against the lumpen because you don't have to be lumpen. You can improve yourself, right? You don't have to embody those traits. You don't have to, I don't know, what would a lumpen person do? You have to steal from people, right? You don't have to pee on someone's car when they're outside of the petrol station because you couldn't be bothered to go into the petrol station, right? You don't have to take a dump on someone's lawn, right? Because you got drunk at the middle of the night. There are many things that you don't have to do. Being lumpen is a choice, right? You can be in the reserve army of labor, but you don't have to behave like that. Have some self-respect, you know? I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you, like,
noted anti-job culture.
Yeah, I'm against this this kind of like glorification of gangsterism culture and stuff like that. I just don't like it. I just don't. You know, it's like, oh yeah, cool. These gangsters are all. No, they're not cool. It's not cool. It's not cool. Marks take dumps on the doorway of pubs. That's a bit different. That's what they're there for. That's why it's called a public house.
Okay, this is where Gene, like, I defend British barbarianism because it's where I'm from. Oh, it's funny.
The youth needs to pull up its pants. Exactly. The youth needs to pull up its pants and get a job. Stop watching porn and playing Fallout, and get out there and, I don't know, help your community. Go to a soup kitchen. I don't know. Well, it is getting very late for me. It is bedtime at Casa del Bergelan. I rarely stay up past 10 these days. It's too depressing. Vaughn no longer gets my messages like in the old days where it'd be like 1 a.m. and it's like, hey, you up? And he's like, yeah, I'm up. No, I'm in bed. Yeah, not doing drugs is better. Not all drugs. Not all drugs. Not all drugs are the same. No.
Yeah, I'm not worried about people smoking weed, honestly.
Yeah. People who want to have their sleep gummy.
Yeah. Frankly, if I'm honest with you, and I'm not for the prohibition of alcohol either, and I am sort of, I've watched these liberals like, maybe we should do what Keir Starmer's doing and try to phase out cigarette smoking and then everything bad. And I'm like, because the Atlantic was doing that. And I'm like, great, lovely. And you want to expand the stupid nanny state instead of like dealing with the problems that lead people to be incentivized to do dumb shit. If you have psychotic tendencies, well, there's all kinds of things you shouldn't do if you have psychotic tendencies. But yeah, have you guys talked about gambling before? I don't gamble, I guess, except on the stock market. I guess that is kind of gambling, but
there's gambling on the stock market and there's investing on the stock market.
Well, yeah, I don't do day trader shit. I will say that. And I don't have a lot of extra money actually either, so it's not like I'm buying indexes all the time, really.
It's all about those index funds, baby. Pro tip here, Ford. I see good things next year for Ford because they're bringing out their all-new electrical vehicle, all-new electrical truck to match the Ford Maverick, which is a fantastic vehicle.
Can we get them at like Chinese EV prices though?
Probably not. But
I did have a brief hope for that stupid Bezos truck that's like starts at 20K or whatever. This all
we'll see in June when the slate comes out. But like that, you know how they're going to get you on the slate. You're going to be able to get the truck for reasonable. But then if you want it to have anything,
like, it's going to be another 20K. Like,
yeah, it's going to be. I mean, the Bezos truck is a cool idea, but I think it was dependent on having those EV subsidies. But we'll see. We'll see. I did like the idea of having roll-up windows instead of stupid electrics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, what people like, if you don't happen to need money when the market tanks, I don't invest money that I would need. In fact, I only really, what I actually do is I just move my index funds around from my 401k, which as a teacher I get automatically. Yeah, I don't have a pension. I have a 401k, which sucks. But that's, if I don't take that money, I just don't get it. So
yeah, no, you do the right thing. I as soon as I was able to, well, not as soon as, but I moved from my 401k to the pension. So I have, I think it's called 402A or something like that. It's got some other number to it, but it's weird. The Model T now.
I actually have liked watching Trump's legacy claims destroy like every group of his weird auxiliary followers. Like Maha's mad about glyphosate being dumped on everything.
It's like it's like you can't do any better than what Trump is doing. It's like literally one by one, he's absolutely giving them the shaft. It's like, come on, man. Like, at least do something for one of them, you know? Farmers in the soup, right? Men in the soup, young people in the soup, all those Latinos in the soup.
Doubly in this, triply in the soup. My favorite one was like, which I don't think he's gonna do, and I don't think he's gonna be able to do, but the whole like, we deported a bunch of Venezuelans, but let's make Venezuela a state.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. I would support that. I would support making Venezuela a state. I would support making everyone a state. You be a state. You could be a state. It would be really funny. Imagine they make Cuba, because what Trump wants to do is, because he's a real estate guy and he's obsessed with legacy, he wants to change the map so that there's like a new piece of America, and everyone will say in the school books, and then Trump expanded America under Trump. You know, when you see those maps of which president expanded the borders of America, you'll see Trump's name on there. So he needs to get something.
Is that what he's trying to do in Mexico? Because that's a good way to lead to protracted people's war on the border.
I think that's what he's going to try and do in Cuba. I mean, reckon they could get Cuba. They could get it.
I mean, well, Cuba is isolated and not huge. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I do think the stuff with Raul Castro is funny, because I see Tim Dillon and all those right wingers being mad about it.
People are sick of it. People are sick of it.
Yeah.
Like the soft Republican voters are sick of it.
Also, do you see people are pulling money out of their 401ks? I actually not only see people, I have a partner is considering doing it, because we're thinking about buying a house somewhere, and that's what we would have to do it with.
You can take a loan. You can take a loan from your 401k to buy your first home. So
right, which is, but we're also going to have to let her finish her degree so we can move to the middle of nowhere, to a place that has really low cost of living, so that if I don't get another job teaching, I can just survive off of this shit.
I told you, come to Springfield, Missouri.
I thought about it. Thought about Michigan. And thought about Mexico. Mexico sometimes looks pretty good, honestly. But except for that whole border moving thing.
I'm telling you, come to Springfield. You won't regret it. You'll be able to get yourself a little Von Fortress, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe I can get myself declared a state.
Yeah. Sovereign citizen Von.
The sovereign state of Barn, You just, make it a little commune of me. It's really easy to socialize all the production when you're one person.
It's true.
Or two people. Anyway, on that note, goodbye. Protect your peace. You get some sleep. Everybody take care.
Good night, everybody. Night, Vaughn.
Bye.